I don't know that I would have the foundation to talk to Frank like I do had that not happened. So the timing of being able to sit next to Frank on a flight that is a couple hours, that was fundamental. So those things happen, and you're better for it.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah,
escape.
it
There's
definitely.
no. Go ahead, Frank.
No, it broke the ice. It was like you're. I'm not going to use the word forced to sit with somebody,
But you are.
but we were, and we were going from Poland to Bulgaria. That's what it was, and so that it was a great experience. I prefer those kind of encounters. Obviously, I'm a pretty social guy. I like to visit with people. I like to pick brains and learn. And he had some experiences there that I was into. With running the Hall of Fame and the museum, and the stories that are associated with that. Just the work and producing events and things like that. To me, it was relevant, and I ate it up. So it worked out well.
But
There's.
then,
Go
Mark,
ahead.
it also ties into an event that Flo had, who's number one. And if I learned this later, is that Steve O'Poolin's dad, Steve Poulin, did not want to have supper with me that night.
It wasn't personal. He's not a real social guy with that. So I force fed it. I was like, no, we're gonna go eat dinner with
With
Kyle, and he's like,
Kyle.
really, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And he loved Kyle. It's the second person that was resistant at first. No, but it was that was a great experience too.
He would have thought differently if he was force fed Kyle on seats B and C on the 2 hour flight from Poland to Bulgaria, and that
Yeah,
could be a
that's not
great way
that.
to meet somebody. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Either talk
He
to
was
him
ear
or
locking me hard too. Kyle was an ear locker, man. By the time I got off there, I had to get my ear drained. That thing was swollen up, bad.
he had you.
No, now I'm busting on him now.
Sure.
I'm watching him blush.
Yeah, right. Well, Frank, you're journeyman. It's a club. It's a, I guess, a promotion, right? For lack of better words.
Yep.
Well, let's even get back further, right? You grew up in Schenectady, up near Albany, and you grew up in a wrestling family. Your brother's the coach at NC State. Your other brother wrestled at UNC. What was it like growing up? How did you guys get turned on to wrestling?
Well, we have a huge, like you said, our extended family was into it, right? We had two cousins, Pat. No, no, not Pat, my brother, but a
Yeah.
cousin, Pat Popolizio and Severino Popolizio. And one wrestled at Penn, and the other one wrestled at Boston University. And those guys immigrated here from Italy. And when they started to get involved with athletics, they were drawn to soccer, but they got pulled into the wrestling world, and they had a lot of success. My cousin Sev is in the Hall of Fame, the Athletic Hall of Fame at Boston University, and Pat was an All American for soccer. His brother was an All American for soccer. So these guys were great athletes, and they started the energy for the sport of wrestling, and then subsequently we picked up on it from their influence, and there were other cousins before them. It kind of fell into play there. And when I came along, I started late. Late comparison to today's age. I was seventh grade. I started to wrestle. I wasn't very athletic, but I liked it. It changed my life. It was something that gave me confidence, and I had success. I hadn't latched on to anything at that point until then, and so that changed the game for me. And then I took that passion and I started putting it toward my brothers, who were younger, obviously 4 or 5 years old, and they started to, I think, reap the benefit from the passion that we were bringing to the family for the younger generation, and we created what we called the Cellar Rats. And brother Anthony, who you're familiar with, was in
Sure.
there. Brother Pat, who you just mentioned, had two cousins, Vinny Popolizio and Mike Popolizio. And then there was Mike Benna, which was Coach Benna's son, who was my high school coach. So we would go down there and we would, I think that's where a lot of character was established. Guys would get, at a young age, it would get pretty physical. And most people would call it dysfunctional nowadays. But through that, character was built and toughness was established and a pecking order also established. But that's where it all started. And then from there, obviously, they went on to make their own, their own path.
Sure. And it's you, then Anthony's the middle, and Pat's the youngest, right?
Yeah, Pat is the youngest. Yeah,
Yeah.
of the brothers. Yeah,
Of you three.
And we got
Of you
cousins in between. Yeah.
So, and Pat, wrestling wise, went on to Oklahoma State, had the most success out of the three of you. When, if ever, I'm assuming at some point.
Define success. Define success.
Success as a wrestler on the mat.
No, I'm kidding. I'm joking, but yeah,
Okay.
no, it's
At what
I like
point?
to bust.
At some point, you can bust all you want, bust whatever you want. But was there a point when you were wrestling Pat, where he caught you and or passed you, or by that time had you put your shoes away and been like?
I remember two specific situations. One, when my brother Pat grabbed me by the throat and lifted me off the ground, not from wrestling. That was the day that I said, Pat, welcome. You're here. I'm not gonna aggravate. You're my brother.
Yeah.
That was
friends.
That one got me. And then I remember hitting a stand up, and Anthony hit me with a claw from, claw, feet to back, head over, brought me right over the top. Yeah, that's when he came back from college, or maybe a junior college, and I was like, okay, time for me to retire. I'm done. So those guys, they surpassed me. It didn't take long, but yeah.
Sure. So what I know about Journeyman, or as far back as my knowledge of Journeyman goes, is Joe, right? Joe Williamson going out and staying with you, and this was like the early Flow days, and you had a couple events, and I think the club before. But I don't even know what came first. I'm thinking the club came before you started doing events, but how did it all start, Journeyman wise?
So this kind of ties back into our visit from Poland to Bulgaria with Kyle. The discussion of this, the real infancy of it was when my brother Pat was wrestling at Oklahoma State. I used to take whatever free time I had, and there wasn't a lot, but my vacations at that time in life were to go out to Oklahoma State and to be around the program, to learn wrestling. At this point in the process, I became bitten by it, and I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I'd go out there and I'd learn from John Smith, or I was just hanging. I was a fly on the wall. I wasn't even supposed to be there, but I just was there, and they were relaxed enough to allow me to be there. And I wouldn't say much. I just hang out and watch and record things until somebody got put to their back, and then they'd ask me to get rid of my camera. But that's beside the point. I would just hide in the background, and I would learn, and I would kind of go along with the ride a little bit. And during that time period, there was one of the times where I was there, and I was so rigid about, I got to get home, I have to go to work. I had, just started a career in health insurance or something like that. And when Pat Smith entered the room, and I had never met Pat before other than watching him wrestle, right? And so I must have been in my 20s, and Pat came in and he said, "Hey, is there anybody here that wants to go with me to Colorado? I need somebody to ride with me." And my brother Pat pushed me forward. He's like, "Now's your chance. Go." Right? And I was like, I'm not going. I don't know the guy. I'm not going. And next thing you know, I kind of got volunteered a little bit. And he said, what's your story? And I said, I got to go home tomorrow. I can't do it. And he's like, come on, man, and he did what Pat Smith did, and he kind of loosened me up, made me feel real comfortable. And next thing you know, I'm in the car with him. I'm canceling work. I'm riding out to Colorado. We were up in Estes Park. It was an 8.5 hour drive, kind of similar to Kyle, right? Like you're forced to be, next to somebody, and you start talking about everything from life to death to wrestling to everything in between. Then I was his partner, and I was over my head from a technical standpoint. But I learned. I mean, that is legitimately how I started learning. And I learned all the little techniques, how to lock your hand, where to lock, above the knee. Like I was learning the little nuances of their system. And, then we drove back. And, we talked. We literally talked through the night until I was about a half a mile outside of Stillwater, Oklahoma. I fell asleep. And as soon as I fell asleep, Pat Smith hit me with a whale bite where he slapped my leg, whack, and he squeezed it as hard as he could. He said, "Wake up, sunshine," and I come up out of my seat and I go, "I'll knock your ass out." We had one of those situations where it was like, I was like, I didn't really mean that. You just startled me. I was sleeping. But anyway, that's how I got in it. And then from there, my first clinic was with Pat Smith, right? I brought Pat in and we did a clinic, and that started the process for me. And then as I followed these guys and I got more immersed in it, I would go to the dual meets and saw how powerful it was, and the electricity and the culture of everything. And one of those dual meets were, when Iowa wrestled Oklahoma State, and it was number 1 and 2. Kyle, remind me of the year, 1998. 8. Encyclopedia.
Yes.
And it was one of the most prolific duels I've ever been to in my life. It left an indelible mark for me. And I came home and I said, I want to replicate this. I want to try to do that. And first year it was East Stroudsburg, Sacred Heart, James Madison, and Buffalo. And that was the start of it. That's literally what started to do it, and I knew nothing about anything. I had no right to be doing what I was doing, but you learn, you learn as you go. And that started what essentially was the Northeast Duels. We started that process because of the influence I got watching those guys battle in '98. And it went from there. And then we started a club, and everything has since kind of taken off with the whole process.
Wow.
But I blame Pat Smith for all of it.
Wake up, sunshine.
Oh, he locked on me so hard, and then I was, I gave him one. I came right up on him, and he was laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing in the whole world. Didn't flinch, didn't care. He was like, "Go ahead, hit me. See how that goes."
So you weren't even. You didn't have a club. You didn't have anything. You were just Pat's brother coming up to Stillwater just to hang out and see what's going on.
Yeah, and then I started a club.
Right.
It was after that, and largely what was pushing me on the club side was how ignorant we were. I would say from a technical standpoint, and from and that's no disrespect to the people that were leading us at that time. It just was different, right? The system and the style, and we weren't exposed to it. And then my brother Pat at that time was getting recruited, and we had no idea at all how to deal with the recruiting process. We would just listen to what coaches would say, and sometimes it was legit and sometimes it wasn't back in that time period. So I got an education on learning that process, and I thought it was valuable that we need somebody to guide people through the recruiting process, and that was one of the catalysts for me starting a club, because it was all new to us. We didn't know anything at all in any capacity, and so once you go through it, you start unraveling the truth a little bit, and knowing where the pitfalls were. So now, as a club that's been around for 25 years or 20 years, whatever it is, um, we use that knowledge. It's an important part of the process, getting guys to wrestle in college, whether it's D3, 2, 1, NAIA, regardless. Where things fit. You know the rules. You know how to promote people. It's all part of the game. A part that we didn't know anything. We were just tough,
Sure.
and Pat, led the way.
When
And
you know,
Anthony too.
yep.
Anthony did it the hard way. He went junior college, took third in the country there, and then through his own path there, got the eye of UNC and made his way there.
Yeah. When you came back and said, "Oh wow, that's what they're doing. I want to have some dual meets," and maybe it wasn't called Northeast Duels yet, and then you start a club. I assume was there a plan or a vision to be like, this will be my job. I can make this how I feed myself and eventually my family, or was it like, this is just something I want to do and eventually it turned into I can quit my job and do this?
No, Anthony, I blame Anthony for that, or I should say, I give him credit. Really, seriously, in all seriousness, it was Anthony that said, "You look at our other friends, and they grew up, and in their spare time, they would do a skill set like HVAC, electrical, whatever skill that they were doing with their family. And what's our skill set?" He's like, "It's just wrestling, and there's no way to it's so hard to turn a dollar on that."
Yeah.
And he's like, "But why aren't we?" And he kind of motivated me to do that, and we started to help out or have a special class within a club. It was like we had a club within a club. It was at TNT Wrestling Club, and that started us doing it. And once you start doing it, you're in, right? And we started to go down that path and make it a little money. It was nothing, right? It's not even worth the time. But it was Anthony's mentality that initially stung me, and then I ran with it. That's part of my, I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness, but when I go in, I'll analyze, but when I go in, I go all in, and I went all in. That's the truth, and that's that. You kind of burn the ship, right? The Vikings burn the ship, and then there's you got no
Yeah.
choice but to survive. And I did that at a certain point. As life started progressing, I was in insurance, and I realized that I started having solid relationships with bigger coaches and stuff like that, and I couldn't call them when I needed to call them. I couldn't communicate exactly when I needed to communicate. And then while I'm doing insurance, I was thinking about wrestling. So I was like, eventually I bagged the insurance, and which was I was making quite a bit of money doing that. So it's a risk. It's a
At what
risk,
point?
but it
At what
worked out.
point was it like I'm gonna bag the insurance and this is gonna work, or hopefully, or I believe it can, or maybe it already was. But what was the tipping point where it was like, okay, hobby enthusiast on the side of my spare time to like, this is what I do.
Yeah, I mean, it was a scary part in my life, right? I mean, you build a book of business with insurance, you get renewals, right? It's an awesome setup once you break through. And I had finally broken through, and then I'm like, okay, I want to go. I'm
Wow.
done. And it was hard because there's not a lot of people that could say, other than college coaching, there's just not a lot of opportunity in the sport financially. However, I tried to be creative and think of it in different facets, whether it's a club, clinics, camps, competitions, and so I started to create four divisions of it, and figured if I diversified in those areas that I would have opportunity to at least get me close to the life that I was living, and it wasn't close right away. It really wasn't, and thank God for my wife was like, take the chance. Let's do it. We didn't have kids at the time, so it didn't. As you have a family, it changes the the complexity of it. So at that point, I took the chance, and it worked.
Awesome.
It worked.
Yeah.
Frank, when you get into that and you do make the transition, what are some of the things you have to do? You brought up insurance. Do you have to buy your own? Do you have to do things that are a little bit different that you don't naturally get with a company?
Yeah, sure. No, all of it is uncomfortable, right? Just the fact of there's no security at all in any capacity. There's no paycheck. You get what you earn. You have to go out and earn it. And I'm not saying that you're not earning it when you're working for a company, but you're literally turning things over to make the money. You create an idea, and then that idea has to become a reality. You have to inspire people to help you, so that you have enough volunteer or helpers to make this thing a real thing, an event. And then you got to convince people, right? It's convincing people is the hardest thing in the world to do. Where you got to say, hey, John Smith, I want to go wrestle in Italy. Why? Why do you want to do that? And you got to say, well, I have this vision. I think we can do this, and I think we can do that. And you got to get people to say yes. You got to get them to say yes. And then once those things start happening, things start popping, and you start reaping the benefit. But early on, starving. You're starving. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. But that's what motivates you. You got to have something that's kind of driving you along and pushing you. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And it's not easy, and not everybody does it. And that's the truth.
Frank, you have kids. How old are your kids?
I got two. My son is 12. My daughter is 10.
So 12. So it must have been 12 years ago you met Joe, and
Yep.
he was out. Give me the rundown and what all happened that first time.
So it was at that time, Flo was doing state championships, right? And they were going to do the New York State Championships in particular. And Joe was crashing at my house. I had known him, but I didn't really know him. But it was like, yeah, man, just hang here. And that night, my wife decides to go into labor. I don't think she decided, but she went into labor. And I had to wake Joe up, and I'm like, here are the keys to the house. We're headed out. It was in the wee hours of the morning. I think it was like 3:00 in the morning or something like that, 2 in the morning. And I'm like, my wife's in labor. I got to roll, man. And he took it from there. He was like, all right, he got up. He was, kind of panicked himself a little bit. And that was a huge moment. It was like I woke him up out of a sound sleep, and my wife was going into labor. And then the next day, my son was born, during the state tournament. So I, as a coach, I missed the tournament, which was a great trade-off. Obviously, and my wife actually made me go to I don't know if she made me or allowed me to go to the finals, later that next day. I got to at least watch, a couple of the wrestlers win their state title. And it was a good moment, obviously, and it's a hopefully a good omen that my son was born during the state finals.
Yeah. You brought up the Italy trip, right? So
Yeah.
and you've always been creative and trying to promote wrestling and hold events that are cool or something a little bit different that stands out. This is like way outside the box, way stand out, way different. When did the idea pop in your mind, and then how do you make this a reality? How do you convince John Smith, like you said, Italy? What? Why? What are you talking about? Like, give me the rundown here.
So, for me, I have always been infatuated with foreign, like the international tours and stuff like that. I love going overseas, and I love having foreigners come here. As a matter of fact, in our program, Journeyman, we take a lot of pride running an international camp and having an international tournament. But those visits overseas they're fantastic, and they're great experiences. And Liuzzi, who's from Italy,
Yeah.
is a big part of our organization. He was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could wrestle in an amphitheater? The old ruins of where the gladiators used to fight, and it's something that we wanted to do. And I talked about it with my brother, and my brother's like, imagine doing a college match over there and doing that. So it was, again, I credit Pat who brought in the college element of it. I was going more high school with it, and brother Pat's like, I bet you that's something that John would consider. And John has a deep admiration for Italy. He's got his bloodline is attached there too. So we started right like that, and then that was the goal. It was really to wrestle in the amphitheater, but their archaeological
That sounds
division
tricky.
is so rigid and so strict that it was impossible for them to really loosen up. And I, as a backup, I had created a relationship with the naval base, the NATO base in Naples. So, as we were running this plan side by side. That the initial plan was to do it for to wrestle in a historic building, but when we realized we were too deep and not getting the answers we needed, we switched over to wrestle for the troops, and we did that, and it was a win either way, right? It was a
Yep.
win either way, and boy, I'm so proud of that event when we saw what we actually did, and unfortunately, the way the cameras were set up, it looked like there was nobody there, right? It looked like it was an empty, wrestling facility, but the people were on the other side, and they had all the
86,000
families, all
people.
the yeah,
I'm kidding.
it was
It was a good
no, but it
amount.
was. I mean, I don't know. Was there probably a
It was over a
thousand,
thousand, I
fifteen
think.
hundred
Yeah.
people? Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was awesome. It was full house.
Yeah.
For what they had, it was full house, and it was great entertainment for them. As the people living on the base, and what struck me the most after John Smith yelled at me was that all these people came up uh, and wanted to thank both teams, everybody. I mean, they were just so grateful that we took the time to do that there for them. So it was impactful. It was impactful, and it was the first time any collegiate wrestling match had taken place outside of North America. So you got to be first, best, or different. And on that one, I think we kind of hit all three.
Yeah. So give me the rundown. You mentioned John Smith yelled at me, but you got an
Yeah.
event in Italy, Oklahoma State. You convinced and NC State they're gonna wrestle dual meet in Italy. How'd you get yelled at? Like, lay it out for me here.
So we were hanging out. The two teams were so in unison the whole time. We led up to the match, so there was practicing, there was eating. We ate meals together. We broke bread together. We drank wine together. The teams, the coaching staff. It was just awesome. And then about 30 something hours before match time, it was like a cloud flew in or came in, and there was a great divide. Nobody said anything. No, there was no clear moment where it was like, this is what triggered it. It was just game on, and it got really uncomfortable. Who was getting on this bus and who's getting on that bus, and people started barking a little bit, and it started getting tighter and tighter, and I could feel the tension. It was so extreme, and we got to the arena, the gym. It was a gym, and at that point, I realized I didn't really have anybody to work the clocks. So I assumed that the support staff that came from both teams would be cooperative, and they would allow somebody from NC State to work the clock and somebody from Oklahoma State to work the clock. But everybody declined. They wanted no part of it. And so I was left, obviously, with the fact of I got to fill this void. And I grabbed a couple guys that were part of the high school on the military base. And I forgot that they don't know folk style. They were just freestyle, right? So the concept of riding time became very difficult. And we had crash courses. We're doing a simulator. Try this reversal, hit this, and it seemed like I had it. It seemed like we had it, but right out of the gate, first match, they start hitting the wrong way, the wrong thing, and it's a nightmare. It is a complete debacle. And we got to stop the match, and we got to fix the clock. And Zach Esposito is like, "What are you doing over there?" Like the tension it was really boiling. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this!" Right out of the gate, stumbling and bumbling. So I say, "You know what? I'm gonna be right over the shoulder. I'm going to actually get involved with the clock. I'm over there, and I'm saying that button, this button, and I was immersed in the whole process at this point. I couldn't even enjoy the event. I was behind the clock. Well, as fate should have it, we get, as you know, after every match, if there's a riding time, you put your hand up and you do what you got to do. Yeah. And I think it was the Kevin Jax match, if memory serves me right. I remember those guys looking over, and I did +1. And I think Jack won in overtime or something like that. It was a really close match, and I give him the +1. And at that time, Smith looks over and he sees it, and what have Oklahoma State wins the whole duel. But it came down to the final match. And I had, the whole thing ends, and I walk over, and I'm visiting with the lead military guy of the base, and he's telling me what a fantastic job and how appreciative it is. And John Smith runs over and he says, "That's bull crap right there, what you did." I think he used bullshit.
Yeah.
And he walked away. And I said, what? And I looked at the guy, and the guy actually, the general said, "Well, I'm sorry that happened to you." Like, I was so devastated. I'm like, "Oh my God, I just got blown off my feet." So I go running. I run after John, and he's like, "Not now." I got Esposito's like, "Not now, Frank." Right? They were like, "We can't talk about this now." So for that whole night, I didn't get to talk to John. And I knew he was leaving at 8:00 the next morning. They were getting out of Dodge. Yeah. So I set my alarm for 7:00, knowing that he would probably be downstairs having an espresso. So I shoot down there, and he was as cool as a cucumber. "Hey, good morning, Frank. How you doing?" And I'm like, "How am I doing?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm devastated. You crushed me." He's like, "For what?" And I said, "I don't know. You said it was bullshit, that during the match." And he's like, "Well, you damn rooting for your brother, putting up your finger saying they're number one." And I said, "John, it's +1 riding time." I said, "Oh, shit. I apologize. Won't be the first time, won't be the last time I messed that up or yelled at you." Something like that. And I was like, "Oh, my God, man, you hammered me." But that was a funny story that came out of that. And it was, obviously it ended well. It was a great experience going to Italy. It created great memories. We went to Pompeii. We went to look at some of the ruins. We went to Vatican. A lot of good things came out of it.
Nice.
And good wrestling.
Well, yeah, lots of good wrestling. And you got treated up by John Smith, and you made amends.
That's right.
And all, that's a great event that you had in Italy. You've had great events up in New York with a lot of good teams. Penn State's been there, Iowa's been there, Oklahoma State. Yep. I could go on and on. Yep. How did you but it started with, I think you said, Sacred Heart and Buffalo and a couple other, smaller schools. What was it like moving from these smaller schools and contacting John Smith and this guy and that guy and that guy who maybe they knew who you were, maybe they didn't. I don't know.
Yep. And so that leads me in. There's two people that directly influenced me. One was Terry Brands. Terry Brands being at Tennessee Chattanooga, I did not have a relationship with him at this point. So I called him and called him and called him and called him and then called him and called him and called him. And I mean, I was like a dog on a bone to the point where I broke him, I think, I wouldn't leave him alone. And I think deep down inside, they appreciated the resilience, the relentlessness. Kyle, we talk about being relentless, right? And that was one of the examples where I think I earned respect just because it was legitimately every other day I would call for months and months. And finally he said, who is this guy? What does he want? And I explained to him what I wanted. And that immediately I got out of a regional team. I got a top 25 team to say yes. And it was Terry Brands, who obviously is an icon in our sport. And that changed my game. I became friends with Terry after that. I have a deep, deep respect for him. And it changed the game for me. That was number one. And number two is the day I called Jay Robinson. And I took a shot in the dark and said, I got this event. I want to go to another level. Will you help me? And he said, yes. And that changed the game. It changed the game for me. And that the 1 year that Jay came, Hofstra knocked off Minnesota. Minnesota happened to be the number one team in the nation. And Hofstra upset him. And it happened at our event. And Jay that wasn't the first year he decided to come. It was before that. But without his, willingness to contribute to somebody that is trying to do something that hadn't been done, he changed the game for me. And he's a guy that I respect immensely too, because of the marketing perspective that he always brought to the table. So I got lucky with these guys. They just said yes. And that's the hardest thing to do, is get people to say yes.
You can say you got lucky, but it sounds like, lucky would have been if you called Terry once and somehow made it happen. Instead, you called him like 95 times, which I'd say it's making your own luck.
95. All kidding. More than 95. All kidding aside, it was more than 95 times. And, that's I think, there's a skill to it, but you run the risk of aggravating people.
Yeah.
Right. There's a blend of showing that you're passionate and that you're not going to go away, and that you have to show that without them partnering with you or participating with you, you can't achieve the vision. And hopefully that vision is one that they're aligned with. And you got to be careful. You got to be careful that you don't just piss them off. And I think I've definitely aggravated people before, but I've been able to at least explain myself that it wasn't, I never get angry. Even if they're not responding, they're busy. People are super busy. And as I've gotten busier, I try to keep that in mind. I mean, there's people out there that call me for things, and I don't respond quick enough, or I just get buried, right? And I try to remember that moving forward. Don't get aggravated at the guy that wants to visit with you. He's doing it for a reason.
Sure.
So those guys changed my life, though. John Smith, Terry Brands, Jay Robinson, and Cale Sanderson. Those four guys in particular gave me opportunity. For whatever reason, they said yes.
Sure. That's funny. You said I never got pissed off. I don't get mad. I wasn't there, but there's one instance that comes to mind where I think you did get mad. And maybe I'm wrong. But did Screwy Louie accidentally eat your sandwich? Or was there
I still haven't forgiven him. That son of a gun.
What happened?
So that's a great story, actually. Screwy Louie, who is a fantastic human being, as you know. super committed guy, loyal guy, and by chance you guys convince him to come work Pop and Flow, which back in the day Bader
I
was a
remember.
part of that, and we made one of the most prolific films ever, which is "Don't Be That Coach."
Squeeze! Yes.
That great video happened at Pop and Flow, and during our Pop and Flow time period, we were all running ragged, and I was starving. The way I roll is, I don't sleep or eat deep into the events, and then finally, when we get over the threshold that
Yeah.
things are running okay, I'll eat, and I'll eat hard. Right, I go after it, and I had bought myself a turkey club sandwich, and I had put it down. I think I ate 2 bites, and I had put it down for a second, and I came back 5 minutes later to go finish eating, and Screwy Louie was, I think, wiping the mayonnaise off his chin, uh, and I was like, who ate my damn sandwich? And he's like, wasn't me. I zoned in on him, and I think I probably snapped a little bit. That was probably back in the day when
Probably. Maybe.
I was
Possibly.
a little less cultured. So yeah, I freaked out on probably. I owe him an apology today.
I wasn't
I
there.
apologized 5 minutes later though. I did.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to apologize.
I don't remember the scene itself, but I've heard the story. I feel like I was there. And yeah, Pop, man, there was some good times back in the day. Old Pop, man, that was like 10 years. Was that 10 years ago we started Pop and Flow?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, man.
Something like that. Yeah. The
Yeah,
Miracle on the
it was
Mat.
a great. Yep, Miracle on the Mat over in Lake Placid, where the team of the United States beat Russia
Yeah,
on the
Miracle.
ice in hockey, and we we have tournament in there, dual meet tournament, which we'll hopefully back at it next year.
Nice,
I'm
nice.
hopeful.
Um,
Yeah.
and the pandemic, I mean, from your point of view, screwed a lot of things up, right? You hold events. Events haven't been allowed across the country, and some states more than others, or some states less than others.
Yeah.
But the New York High School Tournament is it NYPSAA or something like that. The New York High School State Championships, the official high school
Yep.
state tournament, canceled. Um,
In all
I-
sports.
in all sports. Okay, so and you held the state championships, obviously not state affiliated, associated, but you like put on the tournament for everyone. How did this come about? How
Yeah.
did it happen? What were the obstacles?
Yeah. Well, number one, New York State got obliterated by COVID. Right. So we were kind of, I'm not going to say ground zero. I think out west really was Washington, I think hit it first. And then it came here. And when it came here, we were in the eyes of the news and the media. And it was really scary, right? It was scary. And so we reacted, the state did. And I think, you know, from a precautionary standpoint, they really hunkered down on what they were going to allow or not allow, and athletics really took a hit, like it did everywhere, but specifically in New York State, they canceled all scholastic activity, and then the program to reintroduce uh, sports, they started breaking it up into low risk, medium risk, and then high risk. And obviously, wrestling got looked at as high risk. So we got really pushed way out into the deep waters. And I had a feeling that it wasn't going to happen, right? I had a feeling that we weren't going to be allowed to wrestle. And so that intuition, that feeling, that gut feeling, I went out to find a facility. At that time, just as fate should have it, I was selected to be the director of the EIWA tournament. Right, so I
Yep.
started dealing with facilities, and I liked what I was hearing and doing with the Spooky Nook out in Manheim, Pennsylvania. They really were professional, aggressive, had everything. It was ripe for the picking. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to get this facility for this date, and it was for April. And so I had the foresight to do that and secure it. And at the minute I did that and put it out there, the minute that the state canceled the championships, I put it out there that I had the facility and I had the desire to run this tournament. And it was an immediate success. The people, being the fact that I have a foot over in the scholastic world because I coach at a high school and I have a foot over in the club world, I was able to navigate correctly.
Yeah.
And I had the right ears with the right people. So all of the players played. We got all of the people that would normally go to a state championship to go. And it was a unbelievable success. It was actually the first time in 18 years that we had a single division, D1 and D2 together in New York State. So that was like a silver lining in this nightmare. That's
Sure.
something we would never have seen, by the way, because now it's, split up, small school, big school. So out of all the events I've ever put on, it was the most impactful. People were emotional about it. They were truly devastated that they weren't going to have the opportunity to do this, and we did it. We did it. It wasn't me by myself, but we did it as a community, and we put it on, and we provided those opportunities for those seniors, for the kids in general, right? Overall, it was really awesome.
That's
It
fantastic.
was awesome. It was so impactful. I mean, I can't. And look, I've done a lot of great things. I mean, I've had Russia wrestle the United States. I've had Oklahoma State wrestle in Italy, and I have my own international tournaments and all those great things. But nothing compared to that from an impact standpoint. And we knocked it out of the park. We were super efficient. I had Desi with us from Cap Wrestling, and he was Flo's point man for helping to facilitate, the logistics with me. We nailed it. I mean, when I say we nailed it, we were done every day. We had 1,900 matches because we did a youth segment of it too, and we did a freestyle tournament, and then we did the New York State Championships, and we covered 1,900 matches. We were done every single day by 2:30, 3 o'clock. Done. I mean, we were as efficient as you could be, and that's the one. I like running efficient events. I'm super particular about it, and this one it was a perfect storm. We did it. We knocked it out of the park, and we did it for a good cause.
That's freaking great. Yeah, that was freaking great. Did you have something, Kyle?
I did. Just tell us about being a farmer, when you decided to become a farmer, and if you would get some steaks to Mark Bader. I think he'd appreciate that.
I will definitely. You like steak?
Yeah.
Are you?
Of course I like steak.
Okay.
My what?
All right. I didn't know if you were a vegan or not.
I knew you were going to ask that. What, because I live in Austin and have long hair? Come on. I like meat. Get out of here, Frank.
I didn't know. You got to ask these things.
Fair enough.
If we had only had a plane ride together, I would have known that.
You act like I haven't stayed at your house before and we haven't had meat together. But that's okay.
I forgot.
Joe's your guy. Day. I'm second fiddle. Whatever.
No, man. No way.
I love steak.
We kid about the vegan thing, but I judge it not. I will not judge the whole veganism thing.
It's all good.
As you learn to farm and you have such an immense respect for the animals, you birth, like calf them, and you see them grow up, and then you have to be a part of that processing part of it, and it's devastating. It really is a hard part. All kidding aside, it sucks, and so I have probably at one point in my life I had an opinion about vegan, and then now I respect it. I do. I could go the other way with it in a heartbeat. But farming started for me probably four 4.5 years ago. I had a really good friend, my buddy Hugh. We called him Hugh the farmer. He lived about 35 minutes away from me. He still does, and he had 50 head of cattle. And I would go over there. As a matter of fact, Bader, you were with me.
I was just
We
gonna say,
did
is this
the
the same guys?
Yep, yep, the same group of guys when we did the Mark Schultz
Those are
thing. And we
some
went out
interesting
shooting out
guys.
there.
There's some
Yep.
characters.
Yep. Yep, there were some characters in there, Smiley and Hugh, and
Smiley, that was
those guys are the salt of the earth, and I learned through them, I got influenced, I should say, about the farming part. And one of the things that happened here was that we had just moved into my house maybe 6.5 years ago over in Clifton Park, and it was set up for horses. And I had these fields. I didn't have any kind of proper lawn mowing equipment or anything like that. And the fences were around the place. And my buddy Hugh came over and he said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring over 2 calves and we'll put them out there and they'll knock down these fields in a heartbeat. And then winter comes, I'll just pick them up. And so we started that. And I got to the point where winter showed up and I was like, God, I'm kind of attached to these things. I'm like, leave them here. And so they left them here. And then I quickly understood the difference between spring, fall, and winter. When things start freezing 32 below zero and they have to eat and they have to drink. So that started the process. Now we have, I don't know, 10 head. I do about 10 head of cattle a year. That's small, but I raise about 50 turkeys organically for Thanksgiving every year. That keeps growing exponentially. That's pretty cool. And then we grow cannabis with CBD, and that has been interesting because I was not into the plant process, but I had Rich Morris, whose son wrestled for me, is a outstanding grower. He's one of the top guys in New York State, and he helped me get my license, and we started that process. So we partnered up together, and that's it. That's my farming. It's CBD, it's beef, and we got ourselves some turkeys too, organic.
beef. That's what's for
Oh
dinner.
yeah, I mean it's a lot of commitment there too. I totally. I totally get it. When I go to Iowa, I always stop by and see Morningstar, and his farm. He raises hogs up there, and he's the real deal too. He gets right in there and gets after it. So a lot of respect for the farming world. The Hughes brothers too, Russ and well, I went blank on
John Hughes?
Hughes. What's that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Hughes from Lehigh.
Yeah, John.
John. Wow, I went totally blank. But those guys are, they've been farming their whole life too, and so they bust my chops when they see me making errors along the way. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, you brought up
there's a rooster crowing right now.
I hear him right here.
I don't know if you heard it.
It's noon
Yeah.
30 for you guys. It's a little late to be getting up. Yeah, but my one experience with you out in that way was during we're shooting the Mark Schultz film, and I'm not like a big gun. I don't shoot guns. I don't have a problem, but I just not I'm access to and not really. It's not in the realm of things I do. But I shot a 50 cal. I didn't even know what a 50 cal was. Then I realized it's a gun as big as this dang table, and that was awesome. And yeah, those guys, Smiley, and I forget all their names, but compared to them, I could see why you'd be like, oh, this guy looks like a vegan, because they are like, I don't know, a little backwoods, a little
Yeah, it's hardcore.
hillbilly, yeah.
We got a little hillbilly in them. Yeah.
But they were super awesome guys for sure. And that's great. And this has been, gosh, it's been a lot of fun. We're right up to about the hour mark, so we're kind of winding down. But is there anything we haven't covered? Any topics you want to touch on, or anything you want to get off your chest, or let us know before we let you move on with your day?
I said that, those four guys helped change my life. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Flo also was a big part of it. And that is the truth. We hit at a certain time where, you know, back in the day, you guys were a part of the process for me in building a brand. And I'm greatly appreciative of that. And I don't forget it. But when I think back and I think of who helped build the brand along the way, obviously my family was super instrumental, and then those four guys that I mentioned. But you're part of it. We talk about Pop and Flo. We talk about Flo Joe. We talk about Martin. Martin was literally part of the process too. To help me say, yeah, I want to do that. Let's try to do that. So, and that's a long time ago now. But you can't forget how you got to where you're at.
Absolutely, man. It was. Yeah, when I think back to the early days, my early days here, those Journeyman's part of it, obviously Martin and Joe, and coming up to Pop and Flo and Lake Placid and staying at your house and taking me to what's the little food spot?
Peter Paws restaurant.
Peter Paws,
probably.
yes. No, not probably. 100%. You got me. Chicken parm, yeah, the whole we'd get gelato around the corner, so it's always fun.
That's right.
Frank, I appreciate the time, appreciate you coming on, and any parting words before we let you go? I know I already gave you that to you, but
I want to just say that I had to have again my ear drained from Kyle's talk coming out of Poland or Bulgaria. I just want to say thank you to Kyle. He's always really good to me. Thank you to you, Bader, for staying with it for all these years and for your help over the years. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Frank, for chatting with us today. And thanks for all you've done for wrestling. Your latest endeavor was the New York State Championships, and I know people raved about it, and it was a smashing success. And from the sprawl and brawl, I think it was, the Journeyman duels to Northeast, to everything, and the internationals, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future. So thanks for everything you've done, and good luck to you and everything you do in the future.
Thank you, brother.
All right, thanks. Have
Bye-bye.
a great day.
See you, Kyle.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Kyle, he wouldn't let off that you grabbed his ear and you just latched on.
He wouldn't, but I have to dispute. He said that was part truth. It was all the truth. And there was stuff I could have added on, like the relentless piece. There was a time the athletes, because he was the team leader, they wanted Gatorade, and he was going to stop at nothing to get them the protein bars and the Gatorade they needed, even though Sofia, Bulgaria is not going to have Gatorade. He had to find a knockoff brand. But I remember it with absolute clarity. I followed him around. I saw him interacting with Russian team leaders too and building relationships. The guy's the master, man. He's definitely one of my favorites, and I'm totally comfortable saying I'm biased toward Frank Popolizio. That guy walks on water, man.
Yeah, he's done some amazing things, and it's just cool to hear his journey from, wrestling in the cellar, the something cellar, I forget the name he said, but to quitting his job as insurance and going all in on the club and the events. It's a cool journey, man. Get it? Journeyman, playing words. It's bad. Okay, that's gonna do it though. Thanks, Kyle. That's gonna do it. Today is Wednesday, so that's the last show of the week. We will be back on Monday with a fresh set of guests, and we'll do the dang thing again. So for Kyle Klingman, I'm Mark Bader. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you later.